I'm going to invite Bart to come up. Bart is going to come and share his story, share some scripture with us. Bart has a ministry called Breaking Limits, and I'm really excited to hear his message and what he's got to say. So let me just pray for Bart, and then I'm going to hand over to him. So Lord, I just pray for Bart as he comes and shares his message, shares his story, Lord. We pray that you will speak to each one of us in Jesus' name. Amen. I'm just going to go and hug Phil if everybody wants to watch.
Brilliant. Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, first of all, thank you very much to Adam for inviting me here to come and share my story. It's great to have the opportunity to share it with you this morning. And I'm sure the first thing you will have noticed about me is that I'm physically disabled. And having my disability can sometimes get me into some quite amusing situations. And when I was 17, I went to sixth form at a school near Bristol. And the school was a mainstream school, but they had a number of disabled people at the school. And so they had some staff there, especially to help out these disabled people. And one of these members of staff came up to me one day saying, we've received something in the post which you might be interested in. It's regional trials for disabled athletics, basically for the southwest of England. Would you like to have a go? And I thought to myself, I've never raced disabled people before, this could be quite good fun. So she told me that the event was taking place in Yeovil, which from my house at the time was about an hour and a half's drive. And she said it's taking place in just over 3 weeks' time. So if you want to enter, you need to enter pretty quickly. And so I took the forms home and I thought to myself, I'm not very quick, but I can keep going. So I thought, I'm going to enter the 1500 metres. And then I thought, if I'm going all the way down to Yeovil, what's the point of doing one race? It'll all be over too quickly. I'll enter a second race too. And so I entered the 400 metres as well. Now you have to bear in mind that at that time, I'd never run 1500 metres before. I'd walked the distance, but I'd never run it. But I thought, oh, it'll be fine. I've got quite good endurance, I'll train for it, and so I trained for it over those 3 weeks. And I gradually built up the distance, and I ran the 1500 metres twice in practice. And then it was the day of the event, and I arrived in Yeovil, and my name was called for the starting line for the 1500 metres. And I thought it was going to be like the Paralympics, where they put you into categories according to your disability. No. There were 3 of us. There was me, there was someone who I think had cerebral palsy, and the other man, he was partially sighted. He could run just like anyone else. Just couldn't see so well where he was going. And I thought, this is going to go horribly wrong. Well, the race got underway, and I was soon well behind the other 2, and it suddenly occurred to me as I was running around, I thought, the partially sighted man is going to lap me. Is he going to see me? Fortunately, he ran round me, and then the cerebral palsy man lapped me, and then the partially sighted man lapped me again. And I ended up having to run the whole last lap all on my own. And then I was coming onto the final bend with 200 metres to go, and not knowing the order of the day, I heard an announcement over the sound system, "Can Bart G please come to the starting line for the 400 metres?" And I was thinking, I'm on my way. And do you know what was wrong with the winner of the 400 metres? He was deaf. My only chance was that he couldn't hear the gun. I thought, this isn't very fair. I'd run the best part of a mile with my disability, and that was his first race. And the other thing about that 400 metre race was there were people who came in wheelchairs. I imagine probably to rest their legs. They all got out their wheelchairs, they all ran around the beatney, and then they all got back in their wheelchairs again. So anyway, that's one of many stories that I could share with you. But actually, onto my actual testimony. When I was 5 years old, I remember going to a car auction with my family. And Dad and my brother got out the car. And I remember sitting in the car with Mum, and I said to Mum, I want to become a Christian. How do I become a Christian? Because although I was young, I didn't have all the understanding, but I had absolutely no doubt whatsoever about God's existence. And so Mum first of all explained to me the scripture, which I think will be coming up on screen, from John 3:16. It says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." And Mum said I needed to pray and ask Jesus into my heart. Romans 10 verse 9 to 10. It says, "If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believed and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved." So there in the car with Mum, that's when I made my own personal decision. I prayed and asked Jesus into my heart and to be central in my life. Now I've had the question asked in the past, much more recently than that. If God is a loving God, if God exists, why am I disabled? Why aren't I able-bodied? Why hasn't he healed me? And of course, God can heal people, but I also believe that God can use people through the difficulty of their situation, so that his works can be displayed and for his glory to shine through that person. So I was born severely disabled with a rare condition. It's a long name. It's called arthrogryposis. And it means basically that I've got weak muscles and stiff joints. And people with my disability are affected in different ways. So for example, one person might be affected in maybe just their hands, or maybe just their arms. Another person may be affected in just their feet or their legs. And other people like me are affected in their whole body. And each person with my disability is uniquely affected as to how severe it is for them, how badly it affects them. And when I was born, doctors told my parents that I would never be able to walk, and that I may never have the strength to be able to sit up on my own without help. And I was just basically given no hope to be able to do anything for myself. I was given a very, very bleak outlook to life. But I was brought up in a Christian family. And when I was a baby, the pastor of our church, he prophesied to my parents, saying that little by little, that I'd be able to do more and more new things that will amaze people. And he prayed for two things specifically. And the first thing was that one day that I'd be physically able to walk down the aisle of the church, which was obviously very different from what the doctors were saying. They said I would never be able to walk. Well, I was actually able to sit up myself at quite a young age. I imagine I was probably about a year old. And to get around, I would just shuffle across the floor to wherever I wanted to go. But when I was 3 years old, I used to go to physiotherapy sessions very regularly at the Bristol Children's Hospital. And there was this one session in particular that I remember clearly to this day. Because if you imagine my physiotherapist propped me up against the wall. Just imagine I'm leaning against the wall now. And she let go of me. And she said to me, "I want to see if you can start walking." And I tried, and I tried, and I tried. And I remember feeling very frustrated because I just could not move away from the wall. And at that age, I didn't really understand what my disability meant to me. So I couldn't understand why I wasn't able to walk if everyone else my age was up on their feet and running around. But then sometime after that, I was around 3.5 years old. And there was one night when Mum carried me up the stairs to go to bed. And again, this is something I remember very clearly, because as we were going up the stairs, I just had this thought that I might be able to start walking. And so I said to Mum, "I think I might be able to start walking now. Can I try?" And so in the same way as my physiotherapist propped me up against the wall, Mum propped me up against the wall. And she let go of me. And I was able to take 1, 2, 3 steps, and then I fell down. And we tried it again, and I took 1, 2, 3 steps, and then I fell down. Now, someone who is physically disabled like me is often referred to as having physical difficulties. And if you take the word difficult, are there any other words which have a similar meaning? And you may think of the word hard, or maybe the word challenging. Now, if you take these words, difficult, hard, and challenging, is there a word that sums up these words? And for me, that word is possible. Difficult means possible, hard means possible, challenging means possible. So for me, it was quite significant that I could start by taking 3 steps. Because if you imagine that my first step, I was still leaning against the wall, but then I was able to take 2 more steps, one on each foot, unaided, before falling down, which meant that both legs were strong enough to take me, which meant that walking for me was always going to be a real challenge for me, but I still knew it was going to be possible. So from then on, it was a matter of could I do a little bit more each day. And I remember the day after taking my first steps, being downstairs at home, and my parents had brought me up against the wall, and I had to try and make it to the other side of the room. And I made it part way across, and I fell over, and my parents picked me up, and I made it a bit further, and I fell over again, and my parents picked me up again, and eventually I made it to the other side of the room. And then I was gradually able to do more each day until I was able to walk in my own way, which I realised looks very different from the way most people walk. But I was able to walk without thinking about what I was doing. And for me that was great because it meant I had that freedom, I had the independence, and I didn't have to rely on anyone else to help me move around. I didn't need to spend my life in a wheelchair. So I then went to school. My parents decided it was best for me to go to like a mainstream school rather than a special needs school, just so that I could try and lead as normal life as possible. And at school break times, I would go out with my friends to the playground. And I didn't want to watch them play sport. For me, I wasn't someone who wanted to watch from the side. I really wanted to try and join in everything that I could. But because my disability is unusual, I didn't know anyone with arthrogryposis when I was growing up. So if I was to take part in sports and activities, I'd really have to try and adapt and find a way that would work for me to join in. And very often I was worse at sport than all my friends. I was slower than them when I was taking part. But the most important thing for me was that I didn't have to miss out, was actually that I could join in with them. And so some of my favourite sports that I've taken part in were things like running, football, table tennis. I had to go at rugby once actually. I couldn't catch a ball. I couldn't get up off the floor, but apart from that I think I was quite good. And swimming, just to mention a few sports. And when I was 8 years old, I started having swimming lessons at school. And in my first swimming lesson, my swimming teacher put a life jacket on me. And he came in the shallow end of the pool with me. And he said to me, I want to see if you can start swimming. Now my disability affects my whole body, so I've got very limited use of my arms and my legs. So just to demonstrate, I can't lift my arms independently any higher than that to actually keep them in the air. I can swing them, but as soon as they go up, they just drop straight back down because I haven't got the strength in my arms. But because I had that movement in my arms, it meant I could swim slowly in the water. So at the end of that first swimming lesson, having seen me swim slowly, my swimming teacher said to me, I'm going to take your life jacket off now, go and swim down to the deep end of the pool. And with that being my first swimming lesson, it was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. And it took me a couple of minutes, but I made it to the deep end. Then a few weeks after that, once I got more confident with swimming, he wanted to teach me to dive into the pool at the deep end. And most people obviously dive into the pool using their hands first. But I can't keep my hands in the air, they just drop straight back down. So he showed me a different way that he thought would work for me, where if you imagine I had to stand at the side of the pool like this, I had to fall forwards head first into the water without lifting my arms. And when I was underwater, I'd have to try and turn and come out of the water on my back like that. And at the time, I remember feeling really quite scared about it. I thought, what if I can't turn when I'm underwater? What if I get stuck upside down? And I remember I'd be standing at the side of the pool for 15 or 20 minutes, actually trying to have the courage to dive in because I was that scared. I couldn't see how it would work. And I remember one time, my teacher was so fed up with waiting for me to dive in, he just came along and pushed me in. But for me, I'm really glad that he made me do all this, because it really increased my confidence, and it meant I was able to do more and more. And before I carry on with my story, I don't want any of this to sound like, look what I can do, but it's just to show you the miracle that I believe that God has performed in my life, bearing in mind what the pastor prayed as a baby. So as I grew up, I was able to progress with my swimming, so that when I was in secondary school, I think I was aged around 13 or 14 at the time, I managed to get my 800 metre swimming badge. And then when I was in my early 20s, I would swim a mile non-stop each week, just for fitness. And I'm always looking for new challenges to take part in, really to push the boundaries of my disability, because I don't want my disability to stop me from leading as normal life as possible. I want to take everything on as a challenge, and let's see if I can do it. So back in 2014, I heard about the Sport Relief Swimathon, which was a charity swim. And they had 3 distances on offer. And I thought I'd really like to attempt the middle distance, which is a 2.5 kilometre swim, which is equivalent to just over 1.5 miles. So that's basically half a mile further than I'd ever swum in one go before. And I trained for it over a couple of months. And because I've got quite good endurance, I was able to complete the distance fairly easily on the day. So in 2017, I thought, let's attempt the longest distance that they offer. And it was a 5 kilometre swim, which is just over 3 miles. Now, if you take your average lesson centre swimming pool, which is 25 metres long, it was 200 lengths of the pool. Now, because this swim was such a long way for me, I knew it was going to be really difficult. It would be a real challenge for me. But just the very fact that I can move my arms, which means I can swim slowly in the water, I knew that if I really worked hard and put lots of training in, I knew it would be possible for me to complete it, just the very fact I could swim. And after months and months of training, I tried to gradually increase the distance. I managed to complete the 5 kilometre swim on the day in about 5.5 hours, which is obviously much slower than it would be for an able-bodied person because of the limited range of movement as I've got in my arms and my legs. Now, can I just ask, Adam, it's coming off my ear a bit. Is that all right? Just have help before I carry on. Thank you. Sorry, I just knocked it.
No. Is that better?
Brilliant, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, having completed the 5 kilometre swim, shortly afterwards, someone contacted me because he knew I was into sports and into challenges. And he told me about a triathlon taking place. And it was the first of its kind in the country, especially for disabled people like me to take part. Held at Eton Dorney, which is the rowing venue for the London Olympics in 2012. And because it's a disability event, I thought this is such a great opportunity for me to give it a go. I thought I'd really like to try this. And so I entered, and I thought, well, let's enter the longest distance that they offer, because I'm not very quick, but I can keep going. And so the longest distance that they offered was a 750 metre swim in a lake, which you'll see on video in just a couple of minutes. And then it was a 20 kilometre cycle. Now you might look at me and think, how do I ride a bike? And I've got very limited bend in my legs. Now I know some of you may not be able to see very clearly, but I'm just going to give you a demonstration. Those of you who can, try and take a look at my left knee. I'm going to get my balance. And that is as far as my left knee will bend. So it's not enough to turn the pedals on a normal bike. So I would ride a hand cycle, which again you'll see on video in just a minute. Then after the 20 kilometre hand cycle, it was a 5 kilometre run. Now I've had major ankle problems in the past, so I've had severe arthritis as part of my condition, which I needed treatment for in my early 20s. So as a result, I'm not supposed to run anymore because it could just make my ankles bad again. But I was still allowed to walk as far as I like. So I thought, well, if I can swim, if I can hand cycle, if I can walk, let's train for it, let's see if I can complete the distance. And I managed to complete this triathlon in 2017, 2018, and 2019. And each time, it took me over 4 hours to complete it. Then in 2020 and 2021 it was cancelled because of the COVID situation. But in 2022 I found out that I was able to get a new three-wheeler bike adapted with a much shorter pedal rotation, which meant I had just enough bend in my legs to turn the pedals. So it was the first time I could ride a bike with my legs since I was 7 years old. And so I got this new three-wheeler bike in May 2022. I trained for the triathlon again that summer, and because my legs are quite a bit stronger than my arms, it meant the cycle stage on the triathlon was quite a bit faster. And so I set a new personal best for the triathlon by 22 minutes. I did the triathlon again in 2023, I beat it by another 9 minutes. I did it again last year. This time I was quite a bit slower because it was actually a very hot day for doing a triathlon. But I'm going to attempt it again in August, and my aim is just to see if I can beat my time. But each year I'm getting older as well, so we'll see. Now I drive a car which has been specially adapted for me. Has anyone ever seen a car without a steering wheel before? Probably not, probably not. So I steer my car with handlebars, just like riding a bike. I can manage the pedals with my right foot, and for the horn, the windscreen wipers, the lights and the indicators is quite different in my car because I've got a head control. And how it works is there's a button on my headrest. So for example, if I want to indicate to turn left, I hold the button down for 2 bleeps like this. Bleep, bleep, and off. If I want to indicate to turn right, I hold it down for 3 bleeps. Bleep, 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 and off. And by having this car adapted for me, it gives me such a lot of independence because I regularly speak all over the country, and it just means I can drive myself to wherever I need to go, and I don't need anyone else to take me. So at this point, I'm now going to show a video, if that's okay. This video just demonstrates how I've adapted to take part in some of these sports and activities. Thank you.
Through you, I can do anything. I can do all things. 'Cause it's you who gives me strength. Nothing is impossible. Through you, my eyes are open. Strongholds are broken. I am living by faith. Nothing is impossible.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, just a scripture, 2 Corinthians 12, verse 8 to 10 says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Now, I've had many times in my life when I've noticed God's plans being perfect, just things absolutely fall into place at just the right time. And one thing I want to share with you this morning is late 2018, I had quite a surprising invite, which was to go and share my story. It literally came out of the blue. It was to go and share my story out in India in August 2019. Which meant I had quite a few months to prepare for it, and I thought I would absolutely love to go, but how is this going to work? Because I'm sure you'll realise, looking at me, that I need help with certain tasks. And one main thing I need help with is care. I have help with things like getting ready in the mornings and so on. And I thought, will I be able to arrange this all in India before I go? But anyway, shortly after I was invited, I was chatting with some friends from my church. And one of my friends, he's called Isaac, and he's originally from India. And when I told him the name of the town I'd be flying into, it was a town I'd never heard of, called Vijayawada. He told me he's got relatives who live not far from there, and he knows the area. And without me even asking him, he offered to come with me, give me all the help that I needed. And guess what he does for a living? He's a doctor. You know, it just could not have fallen into place, and so we actually went out to India in 2019, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But back in, I think it was 2014. Yes, it was 2014. I had a surprising invite out of the blue. I wasn't speaking at all at the time. It'd be quite a nervous thing for me to do, actually, to get up in front of people. And I was invited out of the blue just to go and speak, share my story at Bristol Brunel Academy, which is a secondary school in Bristol. And basically to share my story and to play the piano. Now, I arrived expecting to go into a classroom, but then when I actually got there, I found out I was going to be taking 3 assemblies to year 9, and then year 8, and then year 7, to a total of around 650 children. And I thought, help, because I wasn't used to talking in front of people at all, and it was just something really difficult for me to actually get up and speak in front of people. But that day for me, I think was quite significant, because at the end of each assembly, I had children queuing up to ask me questions. But there were 2 things that really stood out to me that day. There was a boy in year 8, and he came up to me, and all he said quietly was, "Sir, I think you're amazing." And I didn't think a lot of it at the time. But then I think it was that evening, the teacher who invited me in messaged me to thank me for coming in. And in the message, she said that she overheard that boy say that to me and couldn't believe it, because he was the worst behaved in the year and was on report to her. So she said it had a real impact on him. And then the other thing that day was in 2007, the other thing that day was there was a girl in year 7. She came up to me and she said that when I played the piano at the end, she started to cry, and it was because her mum had some sort of disability and had basically given up trying to cope with her disability. And so she said she was going to go home and tell her mum all about me and really try and motivate her. And it just occurred to me that day, you know, as a child, as a young child, I would actually pray for healing, but it occurred to me, what if God could use me through the difficulty of my situation? And I didn't do anything really for quite a long time after that. But about 18 months later, I was invited to speak, just out of the blue, at the Elim Church in Oldbury, Birmingham, where I knew the pastor at the time. And so I agreed to go up there. And then, having shared my story there, I put on Facebook that I was going. An old school friend said, could I go to her school in London? And so I went to London, and then I thought, this is it. This is really what I feel that I should be doing. And so I set up my website, and I prayed to God that this is what I should be doing, that opportunities would open up. And to start off with, it was really quite slow, because obviously people hadn't heard of me. But it gradually accelerated and accelerated, so that in 2019, I actually counted, I had 148 bookings through the whole year, of which 13 of these bookings were out in India. Now, when I speak in schools here in the UK, I have to be very careful in what I say from a Christian point of view. I'm allowed to share what's part of my story, as long as I don't say to them, you should. But when I went to India, you probably noticed on the video that the clip where I was playing the drums, Isaac, my friend who came with me, he was the one actually playing the guitar and singing at the front. Well, that was actually a school assembly, and it was a Christian school, but there were children there from non-Christian backgrounds. And so I was asked at the end if I could open it up and see if anyone wanted to invite Jesus into their hearts. And I was absolutely amazed at the response, because I couldn't see very far back because of the sunlight, but just in the front, 300 children, 20 children responded, which was just absolutely amazing. And so I really believe now that although I'm still severely disabled, I mean obviously I can walk, but I'm still severely disabled, but I believe that God is able to use me through my disability, through the difficulty of my situation. And I actually think now that if I was able-bodied, would I actually be any happier as a person? And I don't think I would be. I mean, there are some frustrations, relating with my disability, but I don't think I'd be any happier as a person. So I really believe that God is using me now through my disability. And again, last year I actually ended up with 150 bookings through the year, of which 128 of them with schools, and so I actually see my disability as an opportunity to get into get in and share my story, at schools, around the country. Now, very briefly, going to the second part of the prayer that the pastor prayed when I was a baby. He prayed that one day I'd be able to play the organ like my dad, and Dad played the organ at church every week. And being able-bodied, he'd play using both hands and all of his fingers. But also when I was a baby, when the doctors gave the bleak outlook to my parents, Mum asked the doctor with just that little bit of hope, because Dad plays the piano and the organ, and obviously the piano is similar to play with your hands, Mum asked if there's ever any chance of me being able to play. And the doctor said, looking at my hands as they are, or even as they were as a baby, there's just absolutely no chance of me being able to play. There was even doubt that I would have the strength to press down a key. But when I was 5 years old, we had a piano at home which Dad would play regularly, and I'd just sit there and watch him play in the evenings. And because he's a very good musician, it just really inspired me. And I thought I would absolutely love to be able to play like him. And so I asked my parents if I could start having piano lessons. And although they were told that there'd be absolutely no chance of me being able to play, they could see that I really wanted to try. And so they thought, well, why not, let's just set up a piano lesson with the piano teacher at school. And when my parents approached her, the teacher was really quite reluctant about teaching me, because she thought, I don't know how I can teach him, I don't know how this is going to work. But my parents managed to persuade her, so she said, well, let's give it a try and see how I get on. And so in my first piano lesson, it was a matter of, did I have the strength to press down a key? I'm not sure the keyboard's on at the moment.
I'm just going to change your batteries as well.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's right. I can speak louder if necessary.
Just talk amongst yourselves. Bart, talk loudly.
I'll talk loudly. I'll talk loudly. Yeah, thank you. Is this the power button on the left?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. Right. So in my first piano lesson, it was a matter: did I have the strength to press down a key? I did with my right hand. And I did with my left hand. So again, just the very fact that I had the strength in both hands to press down a key meant that the piano was going to be a real challenge for me, but I still knew it was going to be possible. And so I then had to really work with my piano teacher and see how I'd be able to progress and work out which fingers I'd be able to use. And I still can't use all my fingers now because some of them in particular are very, very weak. And just to demonstrate, that is as much movement as I've got in my fingers. So rather than carrying on talking, I'm going to invite Ruth up if that's all right, and we're going to lead you in the song, "Goodness of God." And just to explain that from when I was a young age, I really wanted to try and get to a standard where I could actually play in piano, basically leading worship. I'm not going to sing because you'll all run for the exit, So
Never
Ruth,
mind, still do.
so Ruth's going to come and is going to sing with me. We'll sing "Goodness of God." Please do stand up and join in. Thank you.
Stand and join, yeah, please do.
Thank you. I'll pass on.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Let's give Bart a round of applause then. I think it's amazing. I'm in awe of what Bart has done and what God is doing through Bart. And so, Bart, we just pray for your ministry as you get into schools, as you get to speak to people, that you will just be inspirational to them and point them towards God and what He can do through any circumstance. So thank you so much for coming and sharing this morning.